everyone. Today I wanted to talk about something that impacts so many of us, which is neurodivergence. Whatever that means to you, however that manifests for you, I really wanted to create some space at the start of the entire track to look at how can we best support ourselves, ask for what we need, maybe delegate depending on which track you're in, etc. And really just pause for a minute and look at what are my barriers and also what's the story that I tell myself about those barriers. I think right now, culturally and societally, yes, there is still a lot of stigma around neurodivergence, but there also are so many more resources. A friend of mine sent me a podcast she was listening to, a local podcast about autism and how masking shows up. And she was like, I relate so much to this. And it was really awesome because I was able to understand her on a deeper level, right? And I was speaking to someone yesterday, a very close friend of mine, and, she has ADHD and some other stuff. And she was saying that in her experience, the story that she has told herself and believed about ADHD is actually more of a block and a barrier than actually experiencing ADHD. And this is just her experience. And it was interesting because we were talking about, overproductivity, underproductivity, organization, concentration, like a lot of stuff like that. And she has been able to really lean into what works for her and put systems and operations, et cetera, in place to really help her thrive, for lack of a better term. And I was thinking, how can that be incorporated into Thriving Practice Academy? Because you'll see in a lot of the lessons, whether you're in track 1, track 2, or track 3, you're a brand new therapist just out of grad school, you're a seasoned therapist with your own practice, you're starting your own group practice, whatever step of the journey that you're in, even if you specialize in neurodivergence, even if you specialize in treating people with this stuff, we can be really hard on ourselves and tell ourselves a very limiting story. And so I just invite you to pause and look a little more deeply at what is it that you need. Throughout these tracks, throughout these lessons, you will hear me talk about a level of organization that is required and needed. Now, the ways that I'm able to achieve that, the platforms I use, the tools I use, the systems that I have in place, I have shared all of that with you. But I want you to keep in mind that different things work for different people. So I am naturally someone who has had the pattern of, I don't want to say I'm someone who, because that's so limiting. I am someone who has had a pattern of, that creates space for change, right? Narrative therapy. I am someone who has had a pattern of wanting all my notifications to be read and replied and answered, right? It's like we can fall on two sides of that spectrum of like, I have 1,000 unread emails. I have no unread emails. Currently, I'm going to actually tell you. Oh, wow. I thought there would be like 8. Currently, I have no unread emails. So that's my own like overproductive, hyperproductive anxiety, right? And sometimes it's a detriment. What I see really commonly, especially going into being a therapist or working for yourself, is a level of underproductive avoidance that can happen. So I talk about this in a later lesson in one of the tracks, but one of my biggest pet peeves when I'm not able to see the world through a kinder lens and have compassion and empathy is when I reach out to a bunch of therapists on Psychology Today and I don't hear back. And I've created these narratives of like, how could they not respond? And like, don't they know how important this is? Like I'm high functioning, but what if it was someone that wasn't, etc. And what I realize now is, A, I have no idea what each of those clinicians are going through. And B, often it's not personal. It's a level of potential unmanageability and avoidance. And right, it's like the shame that we feel when we leave texts unread for too long and unreplied, and then we just can't reply. It's all of that stuff. So I really want to invite you to look at that stuff because all of that is going to play a role in what we bring into being a therapist, owning a private practice, owning a group practice. So if you scroll down in the lesson, you'll see just some like common things that come up in whichever track that you're in. And I just really want to keep the door open and the conversation open about neurodivergence and asking for what we need and burnout and masking and being overstimulated and these human things, which are all going to come up in this process. So I just hope you stay with me on this process. And hopefully at some point you'll feel comfortable enough to talk about some of this stuff in the member hub if that feels like a place for selective and safe vulnerability.